we will have this on our YouTube as well. So,
Yeah.
well, first of all, thank you, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Turana. I'm the founder of Femight, and Femight is an inclusive community dedicated to empowering women. And we do this empowerment through networking events, one-to-one coaching, online and on-site discussions, capacity building trainings, and workshops. And today is our first online discussion. So I'm very excited and hopefully to many more. And I'm also very grateful to our expert speakers, Nazira and Barbara. Um, and I will briefly tell you about today's agenda and then give brief information about each of our speakers, and then we can switch to the main discussion. So, as we know, energy sector is experiencing a significant shift, transformation, and this transition isn't just about technology, it's mainly about people. And for young professionals, like many of you in this audience, this shift presents a lot of opportunities. And as the renewable energy sector is growing, there is demand for new skills, innovation, and leadership. And women and young people have a great opportunity to become part of this movement and even lead it. And throughout today's session, we will dive deep into how women can contribute to both traditional energy and renewable sector and how they have already contributed. And we'll also talk about specific challenges and opportunities women face. And Barbara and Nasira will share their own experiences and strategies for breaking down these barriers. And I really hope this event inspires most of you to pursue careers in energy, and it drives companies to create more inclusive and gender balanced workplaces. And now I want to talk about our speakers. So Nazira Moosa, she is from South Africa, and she started her career in the commercial space in the oil and gas industry. And she was the first woman in South Africa to participate in the downstream sector of the petroleum industry. She currently lives in India, Bangalore, and she's also pursuing her DBA on the progression of women engineers in the oil and gas sector. And Barbara is originally from Scotland, but she lives in Germany, and she's director of an EU-wide project called Ready for H2, which is an initiative that coordinates distribution network operators throughout Europe. And she's been working in energy sector for almost 40 years, and for the past 15 years, she's been in renewable energy. So yeah, I'm really excited about. I'll just admit other participants. I'm sorry. I'm excited about today's discussion, and now I will share my screen so we can go for presentation.
Can you see the people coming in still when you're sharing your screen?
I think so. I should
Okay,
be
good.
able to see them.
Yeah.
Just a second.
Unless we see that. No.
Share. And present. So the floor is yours, ladies.
Well, hello, Nazira. I'm going to hand over to you first. How about that? Is that okay?
You are muted, Nazira.
Still.
I'm so sorry about that, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Barbara, I'm going to let you lead, and then I will come in thereafter.
Oh, okay. So shall I give an opening statement? Or I thought you were doing your slides first, Nazira.
Okay.
Oh, no.
No, we
Well,
have your.
sorry, why don't we say hello and have an opening
I think
statement?
so.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yes.
So if you want me to go first.
Go ahead.
Hello. A bit like Nazira, I think I found myself in situations where I was the first woman to do this and the first woman to do that. And certainly when I graduated in 84, that was 40 years ago, and things are quite different. And I think in some respects, things are easier. In other respects, nothing has changed. So I think what we're going to talk about might sound dated, but I'm absolutely convinced all the issues are still there. So I feel as though everything we'll talk about today is very relevant. I really wanted to give very positive messages that if you love the STEM subjects and you want to go into a non-traditional area, yeah, absolutely do it. Because one, if you do what you love, you'll be good at it. And what's the point in doing something you don't love? You'll just hate it. And it's worth all the challenges. And I think these days, if you're clear-headed and know the direction you want to go in, you'll be successful. What I'll talk about later with the slides is really the changing roles for women in renewable energy, where there's just different skill sets needed, and look at some of the statistics that's been collected globally, just to kind of bust some myths about jobs in the energy industry. And then Nazira and I will band the topics around with each other and maybe answer some questions. So with that, I'll hand over to you, Nazira. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Well, a really cool evening from South Africa. I'm actually sitting in South Africa right now, and we have lots of rain and thunder and lightning. So I'm crossing my fingers that I remain online. Just a little bit about what I'm going to talk about. Obviously, Barbara and I kind of build on one another, but I'm very focused on sub-Saharan Africa because I live here. Or I'm born here, and a lot of my work has been done here. And of course, it's about, gender diversity, the inequalities that we see that has been a tradition. But it's not only in sub-Saharan Africa, it's worldwide, It's perhaps more pronounced because we have, very much many more cultural impacts down here. So I think you're going to learn a little bit about Africa. And if you're not sure about sub-Saharan Africa, it's the West, the East, and the South and Central. So that's where it stops. So if you take the map of Africa, it kind of stops in the center. And my focus is basically to the bottom. And as Barbara, said, yeah, we were some of the first women to kind of enter the industry. I've been in the industry for many years, and it's an exciting place to be, actually. It is, I think, for a woman. And I'm really excited to talk about it because even yesterday I was at a meeting and I was offered a project because I do a lot of consulting, and it was taking care of some, in the petroleum industry where they weren't doing too well. And I was so excited that the entire room knew it, the boardroom knew it. So for the women out there, even though we have challenges, even though we have, obstacles, as Barbara said, let's do what we love and let's get involved. And who said that this sector was just about men? Let's change it. Let's be the change. And I think, yeah, the new generation will change it to a further extent as we're seeing right now. I think we're just bringing up the fact that there are challenges globally, and that women do have, obstacles and hurdles to jump over. It's a good start. It's a really good start to where we want to go to. So with that, I think we will begin. Is that okay, Tarana?
That means next slide, please.
Okay. So, okay, let's go before. I just want to kind of give a kind of an overview because that was just an introduction. Can we go one slide before? Before? Thank you. All right. So in terms of the oil and gas sector, it really has the second lowest entrance in number among all STEM fields. So Barbara was talking about STEM. And this I have from a report that the Department of Mineral and Energy has done in South Africa. So, why STEM? Why are girls and women shying away from STEM? And that's something that we really have to address. In terms of oil and gas, one of the the least gender diversified sector worldwide, and especially this happens in the African economy. Challenges that women face are both, they're structural. Okay, so there's structural, and we can talk about that, and my slides are going to talk to that. And of course, there's cultural. In sub-Saharan Africa or in Africa, a lot of issues and a lot of business and a lot of technology and just about everything is driven by culture. So we hear this big word culture in corporate culture, but in Africa, culture means where do you come from? What language do you speak? What is the culture of that? What are the traditions? And you have to continue with the traditions and bring them in. If you don't, then you will be sidelined. The whole idea is inclusion, of bringing everybody into the realm. All right. So that's about it in terms of just an introduction. And I just want to go through the slide. So this is a very interesting slide because it really just talks about women in the energy transition in sub-Saharan Africa. So what I did talk to you about was initially just kind of the traditional stuff, just telling you that, yeah, there is a challenge in the traditional stuff, but there's so much of change. And Barbara's going to talk to that. And renewable energy is the topic of the day. It's the subject. So sub-Saharan Africa has really the lowest energy access rates in the world, especially in the development of renewable energy. We've been testing for years and years, and we just haven't seemed to have cracked it. Okay, the Western world is doing very much better than Africa, and perhaps in time with learned behavior, learned exchanges and things like that, we will obviously get there. We do have challenges with energy in itself. All right. So for example, in South Africa, we have something called load shedding, where in an area will have no electricity for 2 hours of the day. All right. And it's an ongoing process. It's because we haven't funded new developments. We haven't done enough R&D. So that comes with, those challenges come with being in Africa. I'm not saying it happens everywhere. I'm just saying that, these things are about to happen. And we only but learn as we go through. All right. So women and girls, generally, we bear a disproportionate burden of the adverse impacts associated with energy projects and are less likely to share in the benefits. So, for example, when there's a project that has come up. So for example, in Uganda, we struck oil at one point. There was, allocations done, but women were not being part of the allocated pieces of land in terms of where all of this kind of lay. And that is where the disproportionate burdens lies. We have less access to energy. We are so underrepresented in the green sector. There's so much going on. Yes, NGOs are coming into the countries, but they're NGOs from Europe. The problem is that we don't have something of our own. And once again, it's STEM. And, as we go on, I would like to talk to you about the fact that, STEM is such an important aspect, and we have such a huge gap in that sector, and we need more women representation. All right. And I will talk to that in the next slide. So again, women are largely, absent in decision-making positions, responsible for designing national energy strategies. So I'm just kind of giving you the problems that we have. Solutions will come a little bit later, but, I think it's really important. Women may be subject to potential human rights abuses associated with renewable energy projects. So a lot of times what happens is that we set up a mining sector or a mining town, and a lot of women are brought in as caterers, or, they just brought in for administrative positions. And then what we do find is there is a lot of human rights abuses in terms of the statistics and rape and abuse to women. And it's a very real thing in South Africa, as well as in the rest of Africa. So if I go on, if you look at a glance, so women underrepresented in the energy industry worldwide. So now we're talking across the world. So in the traditional energy industry, it's 22%. The nice thing is that it's increased to, well, it's actually not the nice thing, it's 32% in renewable energies. It's really not much of a give and take here. So the problem is that there are going to be 42 million jobs by 2050. How do we get women upskilled to get into the jobs and to do the work? That is where we need to go to. So we need to address the problems that I spoke about in order to get this. Look, Barbara, I think you can come in here. We were never going to get a 50-50 split. We're never going to get that. But we have to move towards that. You do have to move towards that. And, a lot of it happens at government level. A lot of it happens at business level. A lot of it happens at cultural levels. It's just, where do we plug or put the plugs in to ensure that we have this kind of equality that everybody talks about?
Yeah, and I think Nazira, also on that point, it's also the first movers. Why would you go join a culture where there's no other women and it's pretty hard and maybe it's an unsafe construction site with a lot of big hairy pipeliners and
Yeah.
Why would you? It takes the first movers to do it. That's what we need, role models to go and be the number one, be the number two, number three, and then more women will follow, I think, also. So it's
Absolutely,
that's a
I agree with you.
cultural
We have to
attraction.
break that glass ceiling. We talk
Yeah.
about the glass ceiling. We have to break it, Barbara, because if
Mm.
women like you and I and Tarana and who, the rest of the participants on this, if we don't take that step, it's never going to happen. And that is the reality. So someone has to bear the pain. And then it's kind of heyday for everybody else. And I think as women, we need to do this for one another. I think we're coming down to basics. And, there's this whole thing in the workplace where women bosses are the worst to work for, and we need to also address those kind of issues. And it has happened to me. I'm not sure about you, Barbara, but, when I was quite young, yeah, you have a woman boss and then, it just, she needs to be kind of out there. But I think with a lot of education and a lot of kind of opening up and people talking about this subject, I think it has become better. It was a mindset. It was a mindset. And I think we have kind of broken at the mindset, and it's kind of all,
I'm a boss now and I'm really nice. So I'm definitely breaking the mold. I'm not one of those bosses.
Absolutely. So am I. So am
So
I.
it's changing.
No, I've learned. Yes. Look, when you're a boss, you have things to do and you want things to be done in the correct way, timelessly, etc. So yes, one tends to be a little brash at times, but yeah, I think ever since I got into coaching as well, and when I do my consulting, I kind of marry the two, and then I'm like, I'm nicer nowadays. I smile much more, and I'm much more understanding, and I love mentoring younger women. So Tarana, you did talk about mentoring, and of course we will offer some mentoring going forward. May I have the next slide? Okay, so this is a really interesting one. It's just, we'll just talk a second around it. If you look at the, basically the wage gap, because that's kind of a, how do I call it? It's a factor. It's a huge factor. And one needs to understand and ask the question, why? Why is there such a difference between non-energy versus energy? I mean, if you look at the at energy wage gaps, I mean, it's way larger. Why? Is it that we don't have the talent? Do women not bring it to the forefront? What is going on? So I can talk to this on my next slide in terms of sub-Saharan Africa, and maybe Barbara, you can come in terms of globally what's happening in your part of the world. Okay, so here are the human rights and the challenges that we've talked about. So I did talk about the sexual and gender-based violence, which I'm not sure if you would get in the West, but definitely in sub-Saharan Africa, it is a very real thing. So much so that we have policy that is around this, policy that needs to protect us as women. All right. Then we have issues of access and affordable land registration. So in Africa, culturally, when land comes into a family or into a tribe, the land always is owned by the male. All right. And we have, obviously right now there is policy going around, more in South Africa. I don't see it in East Africa much, where land registration, it's deemed where you have a family, you have a tribe, and women are included. So slowly but surely, we are getting there. In terms of policy development, I've been talking about this all the time. It is affecting the intake of women who graduate within STEM. So what's happening now within the universities, and I'm talking about East, and I'm talking about South, and I'm talking about the West. We are promoting STEM to women, all right? Because there is this huge gap, and we have what we call Black economic empowerment, okay, because we come from an apartheid kind of era, so we need to change things. And apartheid didn't only mean black and white. Now we want to kind of blow the ball out of proportion and say men and women as well. So women need to be included. And so STEM is, previously, if you look, and I have statistics, I'm sorry, I can't share it on this, it's the time is too short because I've done research on it. If you look at Kenya and if you look at Uganda, most women just become lawyers. They do not go into STEM. And now, after we had a kind of a roundtable where all the universities sat together in Africa, everyone has understood that STEM is a real big major part if we want R&D, if we want the continent to grow, to experience, and for our women as African women to be able to go abroad with degrees that have weight or carry weight. All right. There is still this whole consideration that women are not valued. All right. This stems from tradition, and it's going to take us another 20, 30 years to break that. Really, as much as government comes in with policy and we do whatever it takes. We celebrate Women's Day. We have, in Africa, we have a different day for Women's Day, and we go all out there. But there is still this whole consideration out there in the marketplace that women are not valuable. The next point I wanted to make is women in energy transition decision-making at policy and project levels. So huge gap. Of course, if women are not considered valuable, how are you going to go to the next one? As much as we have many ministers that are women, and our, oil and gas ministers are generally, a lot of them are women, we're not making that difference. And I can't understand why. The other thing is, are we doing due diligence? Are companies looking at the due diligence? So right now there's a scorecard, it's called a BEE scorecard that's been kind of put out there into the marketplace. You need to qualify. Government asks you to do that. So if you come into the scorecard, if you say that I employ 50% of women, if I employ people who have challenges, whether it is physical or mental, you get added points. And people should be doing business with you because you have a scorecard and you have additional points. So that is how that is kind of coming together. I'm not going to say this, but patriarchal culture and gender roles, I think it's still global. I really don't think it's, just about Africa. I think it's still there. Yes, very much so. We have matriarchal, run families, which is really nice. I think you see a lot of it on Netflix these days. I don't know if the arts culture is kind of bringing in that aspect so that we can grow. And, again, there's social norms and, of course, discriminatory hiring practices. So how do we change all of this? How do we change it? The only way to change it is by having conversations like we're doing now. All right. So here are my recommendations. In terms of policy, gender mainstreaming in both government legislation and, of course, company policies. So companies have to sit down and look at their strategies, and say, all right, we need an X amount of women there. Let's go to the university and encourage them to bring women through their system and ensure that we get the right talent. So that's the first thing. So that talks to a strong basis for the creation of inclusive policies. So everything that you as government come across, you need to be inclusive. You need to think of men and women. Women obviously have difficult timetables, they have families, and they obviously have kids, and they do need family friendly, employment policies and paid parental leave. It's quite an issue. Um, I'm not sure about the West, but you have to stand in a queue in terms of unemployment insurance to get it, and it's such an issue. And sometimes women just don't even end up, qualifying. They find some sort of loophole. So here again, government needs to come in and put in the correct policy. In terms of implementation of gender targets and quotas to set specific goals to achieve. So if we put in some gender targets, so if companies do it, and especially we're talking about renewable energy right now and oil and gas, if they put in the targets and the quotas, and if companies have to adhere to it because policy dictates, yes, we're on a winning streak for sure. So in terms of practical priorities, what can you and I do? Because we're not government. We really not, we can have networks and how do I say, people going to talk on our behalf, and support us. But what can we do for ourselves? So basically, we need to create networks, which we are doing. So if you look, I mean, I think it's across the world. NGOs are doing a fabulous, fabulous role in Africa. Supportive mentorships, that's what Tirana talked about. And, perhaps we can kind of add, and, I've mentored quite a lot of young women, especially in the industry, and providing roles models in STEM. That's what you were talking about, Barbara. There has to be the first, second, third, fourth, and then it's number 100, 200, and then a million, we get to that. I think practical priorities should also, we believe in a better work-life balance. Yes, this industry can get, especially if you're working in the industry, that's where I started in downstream, you can work night and day, even in upstream. If something goes wrong and, at the refinery, you're not there. I mean, forget it. You're not going home. So ensuring that you better have a better work-life balance, corporates have to come in and ensure that they have as many staff as they possibly can. Of course, then there's gender diversity and equity at both the government level and in the private sector. I think I've been repeated this many times. It's so important. If the private sector plays a pivotal part of this, we can mend so many things, and we can get to that level that we want to make sure that we have this evenness. All of us are happy. We're all smiling. There are possibilities, endless possibilities for women. And of course, the last thing is access, which I'm very, very much involved in, is access to training and education through gender-specific programs and education through, how do I say, we reshape the university curricula. So we bring in, for example, in one of the courses, we brought in women in oil and gas, all right? So in the course, the way we've written it is that we talk about the technical stuff, we talk about the practical stuff, and we tell women, we explain to women how important it is for them to have a voice that will be heard. And I think that's important. And of course, in order to get that, we need access to funding and the right funding. And of course, as I said, the NGOs are doing a fabulous job. They're bringing in the funding. And yeah, we're on our way. I can't say it's all doom and gloom. It sounds like that when I have to mention the challenges that we face, but it's not all doom and gloom. There are quite a few women, especially in Africa, if you Google it, that are flying, they flying the colors really high. And they've done that because they've gotten support. And I think at the end of this, I think that's the crux of it. What do we need is support. We need support from other women. We need support from government. We need support from HR within the companies, so that women can get promoted. And, I'm just going to end off saying a few things. So, this topic is complex. It's really complex, and the lack of representation of Black women, especially in Africa, in the oil and gas industry, it's something that we really want to work at. When I say we, I belong to an organization, and this is what we kind of we challenge, and we go to government and we present, etc., etc. And I think what we just need to overcome is our institutional cultural differences in Africa. And we can get a lot of things sorted out by that. And of course, that takes the courage of women to stand up, to speak to the men out there, because, we have that challenge, and create that nuance, create that nuance of understanding the blockages that we face, that we aspire to, that we want to be senior managers and we want these positions. So support us. And that's all I want to say. And that's really, my message to you. We are formulating a kind of a framework for this right now. We haven't finished it in terms of, the way I belong. And maybe I can do that at another time when we have another session. And yeah, I think that's about it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nazira. Those are really good points, that some of practical recommendations. We can do a lot. We don't really need, the government to necessarily. Sometimes change comes from the bottom. We can be that change. I will pass the floor to Barbara.
Thank you. Thanks, Nazira, for setting the scene. I see we're both using statistics from IRENA, because IRENA is one of the few organizations that, and I worked for IRENA for 2 years, so great to see it's being used. So I was going to talk more on a practical level about what the opportunities are. I see a lot of positives. And I have to say, Nazira saying it's not all doom and gloom. I have had a ball my whole career. There's been ups and downs, but overall, an absolute ball. So it's a fantastic industry to be in. And the fossil energy industry, with a little bit of renewables that came in the 80s, is now very much alive. But the focus, of course, is on renewables. And the future is in renewable energy. There, a lot of jobs in the fossil fuels, and they will be around for 50 to 100 years. But future jobs, I think, in the renewable energy industry are so exciting and growing fast. You can see down the bottom, the chart on the right. Look at how the capacity of renewable energy in terms of renewable electricity, which is wind, solar, hydropower, and wave and ocean energy. That's the tiny little other, the black bit. Look how it's grown so fast, almost 4 times over the last 20 plus years. So it's very much a growing industry. If you look on the left, though, there are about, in 2021, there's about over 16 million jobs in renewable energy. And look where 47% of them are in China. And that's just really a recognition that the policy in China is to be a world leader in making solar panels and making parts of the battery industry, certainly the solar industry and other components. So it's just that they're just, as a country, they focused on renewable energy earlier than anyone else. But you can see the second biggest is Asia, not China or India, and then the European Union, and then USA. So it's quite spread. Apart from China being a real anomaly, it's very spread. Next slide, please. So if you look at the average, the number of women as full-time equivalents, so many women work part-time. So this is counting up all the part-times to make full-time equivalents. If you look at oil and gas, it was 22%. And I'm really happy. I think that's the same as you had, Nazira. Yay! Wind is 21%. which is interestingly is low, but actually that's because wind doesn't really need that many people. It's not as labor intensive as solar because you have one big windmill, you have a technical team, traditionally men, maintenance operations, traditionally men, a bit of admin in the office. There aren't so many opportunities for women. But if you look at solar, at the moment, 40% of the workforce are women. In solar is a lot more distributed. You have millions of solar panels that need to be cleaned and need to be maintained. And then there's the land that the solar panels are on that often have agriculture and even animals grazing around them. And it's just more opportunities for women. But in the jobs, for example, the 40% of women in solar, 60% are in sales, and 35% of the women's jobs are in marketing and non-technical jobs like not cleaning, but maintenance that you don't need to be technical. You're just told what to do and you can do it. So lower level. And there's an absolute, as Nazira said, absolute lack of women in the technical, management, and policy making roles. So next slide, please. Here's a little, so I then took a snapshot of wind and solar, a bit of a deep dive. If you look at the circle on the left, the jobs that are needed for solar, 63% of them, you don't need to be highly qualified. And that's not saying whether it's technical or not. It's just you don't need to have a degree or be specialized. And there's a lot of opportunities for women to be in that sector. But also, if you want to be in STEM, almost a third of wind is in STEM. So it's quite good opportunities for women to work in there. Only 5% non-STEM if it's not admin and management. So it's a completely different from the fossil fuel industry. If you look at the wind on average, if you look at the lines on the right, that's just another way of showing the pie chart that the 21% of women working in energy, it was 22 in the previous slide, but 21, 22, that's the average. So you can see that women in non-STEM and admin it's the average. Well, admin, they're way above average. But more jobs, we're not saying you have to be STEM to have a good career in energy. We are talking about STEM, but there's other opportunities. Next slide looks at solar, so very similar. Oh, what happened to my solar? Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought there was another pie chart for solar. If you go back one, please, to the solar one. Just back one more. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Okay, there isn't the same detail. So if you move forward 2 slides now. So you can see there's more opportunities for women. So the next slide, thanks. So challenges, probably repeating a lot of what Nazira said. Interestingly, in order of priority, perception of gender roles plays a big part. A lot of women will say, I can't do that job because women don't do that job. And that's a challenge in itself, that school kids, even at primary school, are thinking gender stereotype careers. All the boys want to be a dustbin man or a fireman, and the girls maybe teachers and nurses. I mean, it's very stereotype. I think it is changing, but it's still surprisingly stereotype. I was part of an organization called the National Association of Women in Construction, and it came over from America to Australia. And I was part of the funding team and headed up the WA branch. And we got all of $80,000 from the Australian government, because this is in the early 90s. And every primary school in Australia got a video, a VHS video, and it showed about 12 women in construction. They had a painter, a brickie, a town planner, an engineer, electrician. It was great. And because the government even supported that it starts at primary school. So I think it's moved on a bit from having to have a video in the primary school, but it's still there. Limited mobility is an interesting one. Often women more than men have to look after elderly parents, or they're looking after the kids more, or they're just tied down to family and they're not able to move within their career. And that's an interesting aspect. Hiring practices, absolutely. Macquarie I met this wonderful man in Australia who was on the board at Macquarie, which is a very international financing institute, in particular for energy. And he said, I don't like that we don't have so many women. HR, I want an inquiry into what happens to HR. So they actually did an assessment, and big surprise that most of the people in HR doing the interviewing were looking for themselves. And so then in the room, if you have more men, because it was a financial institute, it was more men at the senior level. When they interviewed, they were looking, that person plays rugby. Oh, that person went to the same school as me. So they were just hiring characters that fitted their own characters. So what they started doing, and this was about 20 years ago, they started hiring with no names, no gender. And lo and behold, not 50, I seem to remember it was nearly 40% of the final candidates that turned up were women. So absolutely, HR can change things. Whether you like targets or not, I think they work. I like them, I don't like them, I don't know. But if there isn't a target, sometimes a company just will not change, will not absolutely change its practice. So there's nothing wrong with a target, because after all, a lot of men that get jobs, they're just meeting a target that, they want someone else for the rowing team, or they want someone else who likes to watch footy at the weekend, or whatever target they have. Another one, which I think we all know about, but it's worth mentioning, is self-perception. It is absolutely common knowledge that women often underestimate themselves. And I'm sure we've all seen that article on the internet or through LinkedIn that, if a woman looks at a job, she says, I can only do 80% of it. They won't want me. A young man will look at it and say, I've got 40% of that. Yeah, she'll be right. I'll go for it. Now, that's a bit corny, but I do believe that often women are brought up that you have to be the best at everything to get what you want. And that's not true. You have an equal right to be there. And I always think you have the same right to be as bad as the men. You don't have to be the best. You just have to be as good as the others, or as bad as the others. And then we talk about workplace policies, lack of STEM background, and Nazira's talked about that. Interestingly, in Irina's survey, in the solar industry, 76% of the men interviewed, and that's from government and industry and associations, felt as though the solar industry had equality for women. Only 41% of women did. Now, 41% is good, actually, if the women in the industry, so you imagine they're seeing what's happening. But big difference. The men think everything's all right, and the women are, no, it's not all right. Okay, next slide. So recommended measures for support, off the top of my head, not on this slide, is pick your work or your career because you love it, not because you think you have to do it or you have to prove anything. But as my father used to say, be careful what you want, love, because you might get it. And that's true. I've fought for some promotions, and then when I'm offered it and I look around the room and think, I actually don't want to work with these guys. I don't want to be 10 hours a day in this office working with this group when I've got kids at home or something. So no, I don't want it. So be careful what you want. Make sure that what you're going for is for the right reasons, and that within your heart, it's fun, it's exciting, it's what you want to do, or it's a challenge you're looking for, but certainly not just to prove a point. Keep your priorities, definitely. Priority, family first, and stay sane. I think Nazira was talking about work-life balance. Absolutely, stay sane. We can all work too much and get a bit off track. Keep your qualifications up so that you absolutely have a right to apply for whatever jobs or seek whatever work you want. Have the training that's required, and definitely seek mentorship. Men and women, I have to say, some of the wonderful people in my working life, men and women, but definitely men and women, but also be a mentor. If you're even 3-4 years in the industry, you're super experienced compared to a graduate, or someone at university would be looking for guidance, and they might actually listen to you more than oldies like me. So also offer your wisdom to the younger people. Network, we've talked about that, or Nazira talked about that. I'm a member of Pipeline Association, Women in Green Hydrogen, Women in Energy, some other things that I can't even remember at the moment. There's about 11 things that I'm involved in just because I'm happy to talk and help out. Because if someone had been there when I started out, life would have been a lot easier. And it's just to talk. I find the best is talking. I love life stories. I love asking, especially older people, how did you end up here? Because as they tell you, and I always say, what did you do after school? What was the first thing you did after you finished high school? And that's always very interesting. And then how did you get here? And by listening to people's stories, they actually end up telling you what the challenges are and how they resolve those challenges without it getting technical or too formal. If things are bad, move. Life is short. And I've had some of the biggest surprises. Some of my, what I thought would be a dream job were so toxic that I left because it really wasn't worth it. So don't be disappointed. You never quite know what you're going to get. But of course, do your best. Be very aware that there's a difference between a sponsor, a mentor, and a coach. A sponsor would be someone that would say, I'll get you a graduate experience, or I'll give you a mentorship, or I'll put a good word in for, promotion or training. A mentor is someone where informally you talk and they listen and you share experiences, and maybe they give you guidance, but it's more about a sounding board. And a coach is really someone who you're expecting some lessons from, some wisdom and some information that will help you change what you're doing or understand what you're doing. So understand that what are you looking for? And some people will fit different categories. Stay safe as a woman, absolutely. If anything's dodgy, just, stay out of it and be very aware of the environment and what you're walking into. And I have to say, family support, partner support, spouse is super important. And it's all wrapped up in this support for a woman to do what she wants and to ignore cultural challenges and barriers. And then also fight for your rights. Don't back down, but also pick your battles. You can't come out fists. It's just not going to work. So that's easy for me to say, but I think you'll know at the time what's the right thing to do. And then the other thing is really dream about what you want. And what do they say? Put it in a pink bubble and let it float into the atmosphere. The creative visualization. But aim high. Absolutely. I want to do this. Why not? You have as much right to aim for any position or role or situation as anyone else, including men. So I think I'm not talking to this slide because Nazira's talked about it. And what I've said is I've tried to make it a wee bit more personal about what you can do to secure your career. Two things I've always completely ignored barriers and ignored norms. And I don't know where it comes from. I come from three girls brought up in a remote farm in Scotland means 20 minutes to the nearest town. But for us, it was remote. And we never got taken out in the evening. And in summer, there'd be 2 weeks where we didn't go anywhere. So, surrounded with women, a very feminist dad who said you can do what you like. So I've always, for some reason, I went to a convent school with the nuns. Actually told us you can do what you like. They were amazingly feminist. So I've always been told you can do what you like. So even if you don't hear it, tell yourself that in your head. And what's the worst that can happen? If you go for something you don't get it, then it possibly wasn't right for you anyway, or you're not going to get it. So there's better things. And I like there's an expression that problems are just guideposts for you to do better things. If something's a real problem, just maybe it's a sign that something else is more fitted to you. I don't know. Is that my last slide, Tarana?
Yeah, I think the next one is Q&A.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that's my words of wisdom. And one last statement, always stay positive and happy because there's just no point being miserable.
Barbara, I have to tell you, I also went to a convent school.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
I
got
do
something.
not condone Catholic institutes, but I have to say their schooling was good.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you both so much for sharing your personal experiences and this inspirational discussion as well. So I'm going to open the floor for Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to
I
drop
see
them
one
in.
chat question, Tarana, and actually, so Zainab, is it Zainab is your first name, I hope? Zainab. I was 30 years in the fossil fuel industry and now, 28, whatever, and I've now done 12, 15 years in renewables. Your skill sets or the skill sets of people, it's the same skill sets, it's just a different product. I was always in project management, construction management. That's the same. I mean, burying cables for electricity or pipelines, different size and everything, but essentially the skills are the same. I apologize, I didn't put a slide up about transferable skills. I have very high percent, I think 90%. I don't know what you think, Nazira. 90% of skills in the fossil fuels are absolutely
Yeah, definitely. Look,
very high.
if you belong in STEM, if you
Yeah,
have any kind of authority in STEM, you can
yeah,
always just transfer, so for example, engineers, okay?
yeah.
You don't have to be an engineer to build, a specific engineer to build a windmill. Do you know what I'm saying? Or something, or doing something in renewable. Actually, I
Just
know
go
a lot.
buy it from China.
Yeah,
I'm
just go
joking.
buy.
Just go buy
I
it from China.
know. But
Yeah.
I think yeah, it should not be a problem. The thing is, if you have the skill and you have the ability, you can just transfer them. That's the way I see it. And renewables is such a new thing. So you may have a brilliant idea.
And I'm sorry, Stefan, but STEM stands for science, technology,
Yes,
engineering, and
I saw
maths.
that. Math.
Maths. We do need doctors on.
We
Is
need
there a doctor in the house? No, but there's a mathematician
mathematician. Yes.
that will calculate your probability of surviving whatever's just happened. But yeah.
I saw that I was going to say
But
something and I was
good
like,
for
okay.
you, Stefan, for having a go.
I think Farida is
Um,
participating.
we have someone, we have Fadi to have.
Whoa, that's a big question. Okay, what is the women?
Oh, Agnes. Okay, let's break.
So I've done that. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I've got my story of how to do that. Nazira, I don't know if I'm hogging the floor.
If the women has the break in the work, like to use them to what to tell them how to
So
go from. Okay.
I always
Uh,
think sorry,
yeah.
Nazira, you go first. Yeah.
No. Go ahead, Barbara. All
Well,
right.
I always think, oh, God, did you mean
Go
what you
ahead.
said or not?
B before N. Come on, right. Go your turn.
Um, I always think if you go to management or go to HR, you don't go with a problem. You go with your issue and you go with a solution. So I was a consultant because I'd come from Europe and I'd actually I got a 6-month job in Australia, but I was in Malaysia because I was backpacking around having fun, having a break. And I got a job very quickly in Malaysia, amazingly. This is in the early 90s. But the immigration department wouldn't give me a work visa because I was a woman and I was in construction. So already that was interesting, whereas the company didn't care. So the agency, because if you're a foreigner, you had to go through a employment agent. They said, we've got this amazing job in Australia where you can be the construction superintendent. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but I thought I can do it. I mean, I kind of knew, but I thought, whoa, okay. So when I got there, they said, we'll only take you under consultancy. There is no staff, it's a project. So I suddenly found myself creating a company, which is easy. So therefore I was a consultant, but I only had 6-7 years out of uni. So I wasn't like an experience. Anyway, so I was working as a consultant, which means if you don't work, you don't get paid and you never know what's happening next. So then 4 years later, I'm pregnant and I'm on a project and I think, okay, how am I going to manage this? So interestingly, mobile phones were kind of being used a lot by 97. I had a laptop. I've still got it. It's this clunky thing. And the internet, you could have dial-up Wi-Fi, actually dial-up internet access in your house. So I went to the lovely project manager, who was a very decent man. And I said, I don't want to stop working the project. And I've spent 2 years on it. I would like to continue but part-time, let's see how it goes. I've got a solution. I will pay for my internet access because it was quite expensive at the start. I've bought a laptop. I'll make it work. And he just said, yeah, great. Okay, I trust you. Instead of going to HR and saying, I have a problem, what do I do? So I offered a solution. And then also my husband in Australia, he got a job way up in the middle of the desert. And I was on another project. And I said, okay, can I commute? I'll commute. And the project manager had been divorced because he had always been away on construction sites because I was on construction a lot. And he said, I understand. No, I'll tell you what, we will fly you up and down every weekend. So I took this little plane up to a cattle station in the middle of the desert on a Thursday night. And I came back on the Monday morning and everything. So, you'll be amazed that sometimes you come up with an issue and the man or woman says, I completely understand what your issue is and I'm happy to help. What helps is both of them, I had been working for them both for about 2 years before each of those conversations. They trusted me, they knew me, they had invested in me. So it depends on the situation. If I'd just been working 2 months and said I'm 7 months pregnant, how's this going to work? They wouldn't have trusted me, or whatever. So that's what I did for taking breaks for kids and also keeping sane when I wanted to be with my husband a lot in the middle of a desert. Nazira.
Okay, so I think in today's, there are two parts to your question. In today's age, I would think, HR is very aware of family responsibility. And HR is aware that people do take time off, which we call a sabbatical, if you'd like to call it that. I think even LinkedIn gives you a chance in your thing to say time off for health reasons, for work, or whatever it is. So I think the first thing is you have to be honest. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You have to be honest. I've been away. I've had 2 children. I've had to take care of them for 2 years. I've kept myself updated doing A, B, C, D, so that I'm still in tune in terms of what the guidelines in my work field are. So I think keep yourself abreast of what's happening within the workspace and be honest. I think, I always say honesty is the best policy. Just go ahead and say, and I promise you today, HR policies are so fine-tuned to this that you can't go wrong. You really can't go wrong. So that's really my advice to you, is just go in and say, look, I haven't been here for 2 years. It's only 2 years. There are people that do their PhD and take 6 years off. Okay, so it's really not. I know it's scary. I know it does seem scary, but you just have to be brave enough, and you have to show her that you still have the skill. Him or her. I'm generalizing here. I mean, I'm gender specific here, and I shouldn't be. The second part is, about making errors and things like that. We all make errors. We all
Exactly. Yes.
We all make it, and it's okay. The thing about making an error is to own up to it.
I was going to say take
Especially
ownership. Yeah.
especially in company culture. We have this thing called blame culture where you'll say, no, but he didn't do this, so that's why I couldn't do that. No. If it was you, own up, just own your mistake. They say you've walked into the wrong room, admit that you've walked into the wrong room and own it. Say I've made a mistake and own it. And I think you would go very much further. Once again, it's about truth. It's about speaking the truth and speaking from your heart. That's
Yeah,
what I have.
and I think, Nazira, also to say, also if you go in the room and you've made the mistake, have the solution. Don't go with the problem.
I agree. No,
Expect,
I agree.
yeah,
You have to come up with a solution. So
go, I'm
I'm
going to
very
do
much
this.
like that.
Yeah.
When I was in industry, and I had a team reporting to me, and they would say, "Oh, Nazira, this went wrong." Don't come and tell me what went wrong. You can come and tell me what's wrong, but give me 3 or 4 solutions, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then we can all sit down and we can choose together which is the best solution. So I agree with you 100%, Barbara. You have to
Yeah.
have a solution.
Ayan is asking, as a young woman just starting, what steps can I
Oh,
establish?
Farid has had his, no, we are being very unfair here. Farid has his hand up for a long time. Go for it.
Thank
Oh, I
you.
didn't even see it.
Ah.
Kamana, just tell us when we have to stop talking.
So thank you, Kona, for the organizing such an informative event, and thank our speakers for such an insightful presentation. I have a question about what steps can men in managerial positions take to advocate for gender equality in the energy sector?
Wow, what a question. Everything. I actually something I would say, just because I get hearing your voice, Farad, men get treated as badly as women sometimes. This is not purely, all the issues we talk about, men have that too. And I'm always surprised if I share some things with men of my generation, and sometimes they say, it wasn't because you were a woman, I had that, or I was sidelined or something. So one big thing I was going to say is not all the problems in work are because you're a woman and life's unfair for women in the industry. So sometimes it's not. Farid, I think you have to read the room. You have to know who you're talking to. Like if you're on a board, what are they like? If you're in a management team, or if you have a team, who can you talk to? Where are your supporters? And I would have a look at the big ticket items, like do an analysis of where the women are. Do you head up a team? Farid, are you a manager
Yeah,
with? Yeah.
yes, I actually do manage an organization.
Okay, so do you know how many women you have? Do you know what their jobs are? Do you know what their pay grade is?
Yes,
And have you done a comparison with the men?
actually,
Yeah.
we do have an NGO, and like 90% of my NGO is like females.
So
Like,
90% are women.
yeah,
Oh, so do you want diversity the other way?
kind of, yes.
Ah, okay. Well, same. I mean, I guess the same. Have a look at what you're offering. What are the skill sets? Who are you looking for? And are those skill sets do the people have to come from uni, or do they have to come from a trade? Like, what is the issue? What is stopping the men coming? I have to say, working in renewables, and certainly Irina, it was 50-50, absolutely 50-50. So Farid, I wonder why you have mostly women. Are you mostly an admin think tanky NGO and less technical
Yeah,
skill
generally,
sets?
I have to support you on that, Barbara. NGOs are very, very cautious
Yeah.
when it comes to diversity and employment statistics. So I think that's quite a question, Farid. Maybe you need to ask them.
Yeah.
But if I heard your question correctly, I think I have one line for you. Just support women. If that was
Yeah.
the question that I heard. If how do you, what do you do? Support women and, believe in them. And I think, we talked about cultural norms, we talked about structural and, all of these issues.
Yeah.
You support a woman supports you. And it works both ways. It shouldn't be because of one or the other. I think basically in the workplace, just to ensure that you have this equality, everyone needs to support one another. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Thank you for the answers.
I
We
hope they
have
helped. Yeah.
we have Ayan. So that's the question, Barbara, you saw first. As a young
Okay, I thought Farid was doubling up. Okay. To establish yourself, one, work out what do you want? Do you want, I think if you look at your hand, you can be technical, you can be project management, which is technical management-y, still male dominated. You can be head office, you could be in HR or finance, or project development or strategy. You could say to yourself, I just want to be in the board. I want to have that career path. And the fifth one is in a support role. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying I want to stay at a certain level, and that's where I'm happy at. So there's kind of work out what you want. Sorry, have you qualified from uni? Like, have you already chosen your academic pathway? Because that's the kind of the first step. What did you study after school, and are you in the right sector? If you're not, study again and move over to where you want to be. And then establish yourself, be absolutely squeaky clean with your ethics, your honesty, your work practices. Be a really nice person at work. I have never joined in swearing. I've never joined in with aggression when I see it. I go super cool. If there's a real aggression or something, you know, I go the opposite way. I go super cool. You know, maybe that night I can't sleep but I don't really show it. So you have to be, you know, a good example of a great team person or an employee. So it depends a bit, Diane, what you mean. I mean, I think you have to understand what are the different career pathways and which one do you want, and then establish. Just apply all over the place. Apply for everything you possibly can. If you're looking for work, network your socks off. I still think I've only ever applied for 2 jobs in my life. Everything else has been word of mouth, especially if you're a consultant. But the disadvantage of being a woman is if you do something wrong, everyone hears about it. The absolute advantage is if you're good at what you do, everyone knows about it. And no one forgets your face. No one forgets your name. Use that to your advantage. Network. And I always, I was going to say my nature was when I left uni, I just wanted to work on the rigs, but the idea of sitting in an office 9 to 5 was, I just didn't want it. That was me. I didn't want that. I didn't need that security. I was free. I didn't have to look after parents, or I didn't have a partner and kids and stuff at that age. So I always worked on projects because I wanted to work really hard, and then I'd have a few months off, and then I'd work really hard. So that was what I did. So I think also to understand, are you someone that wants to have a mortgage and a nice car by the time you're 25? Then that's totally different. I was living out of a backpack for years and having fun around the world on different construction projects. So again, to establish yourself, work out what it is you want. Very different career paths. Nazira?
Yeah, I guess you know, the starting point is, have you studied? If you are, what are you studying? And you know, even if you're doing a Bachelor of Commerce, you can do your honors and your masters and just kind of find the line that kind of takes you to exactly where you want to. So
Yeah.
you can manipulate it in any which way you want to, but be clear about where you want to go. I think there's a start point and there's the end point. It's a journey, and you need to get to that, and you need to figure out what it is, and then how do you do it. And you know, at universities there are counselors there. You know, you can come to us, you can, you know, just ask people that, or you're for, just to guide you. I think guidance is really important, just because sometimes we do make mistakes. You know, I wanted to be a chartered accountant, and then I decided to go another route altogether. So
I think try and talk to people who are in the company that you're thinking of, or in the job that you're thinking of. Try and talk to someone. If you're not university material, or you can't afford it, or there's some other reasons you're in a country that doesn't offer it, or trades and apprenticeships are absolutely fantastic. And so many people start as a tradie and work their way up to wherever they want to go. Often it's less stress, and it's a wonderful career, and it's good money as well. So it's not all about degrees. I think if we say STEM, I'm always very cognizant that also means trades. I interview and hire people over the last few years, and I would take someone with one jobs out of school or uni, people who have actually served tables or done real work, and not gone straight from academic into something else, but also people that have worked up the ladder are worth their weight in gold. In terms of STEM and energy, it means you know what's happening in the field, or you know what's happening in the laboratory, or the construction site, or whatever. Don't ever underestimate. You don't need a degree to be successful in STEM jobs in the industry. Any other questions?
I actually asked some people over email, and there are 2 specific questions I'm going to ask for them if no one wants to ask any more questions. So one question which I could actually relate to as well, because I'm into female entrepreneurship, And the question was, are there particular challenges for female entrepreneurs entering the renewable energy sector? So
I think there's all sorts of statistics how men just get more
I
funding and
think
get
our
more money.
entire presentation talked to that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Mm.
Again, you just have to have a good idea, a good innovation. I think anyone who is funding a startup or innovation would just be daft if they didn't pick the product and the people they believe in. So just trust yourself and your product. Pitching is everything, whether you're a man or a woman. Nazira, you sound like
No,
you've done a bit more
I
work in that.
certainly I agree with you on that. It's a very broad question, and it's very difficult to drill down unless you have, pure facts. But yeah, I support Barbara and what she's saying. Yeah, very much so.
And how you think mentorship and let me see, mentorship and networking can advance women's careers in the energy sector?
Oh,
Oh,
Nazira, I'll let you start on that one.
I
Big
think
time.
you mentioned something, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you can get enough of it. You network all your life. As Barbara said, she was only offered two. I mean, she only
Yeah.
applied for 2 jobs her entire life. Everything came out of her networking, and I find the same thing happens with me. I attend a networking, and girls, please don't be afraid to go alone. Please.
And an example also,
Always.
yeah, if you don't network, no one knows you're looking for work. I mean,
Yeah,
you could be
absolutely.
thinking, I want something. If you don't tell people, they don't know. A good example is I'd finished on a project, having a bit of a break. The kids were young. It was great. I went to and then I thought, okay, it's time to go, to get back into something. And I went for a luncheon, and literally there was a man there that went, Jinxie, and it was like he'd forgotten I existed, because that happens. And he went, are you free? And it ended up 3 years actually on a project. So if you're not there, people might actually not know you're looking for work, might totally forget about you. It's all about networking. Of course, now with more online networking, you can do that. You can use LinkedIn saying seeking work. There's no shame in ticking that at all. I had that last year. I had a year off, and I put that on just to see what would come in, and it was quite interesting what came in. So there's that. There's also other fora for if you're looking for work. But that's one of the things. The other thing about networking is just talking. And if you have a difficult time or an issue, you know, to talk about it helps. And especially when someone else says, oh, don't worry, that happened to me and this is what I did, or, you know, just talking and sharing. But some people don't like that. Some people don't want to talk and share. It depends if that's for you. But I think essentially, if you don't tell people you're looking for work, then the word won't get round. And that's part of networking. You also can see what's happening, and you also hear interesting things. I did a master's purely because I realized I hadn't thought of it at all until I was talking to a certain group of people. And then I saw a woman at work who I thought was really brilliant. And I talked to her. I said, can we go for coffee? And I asked her about how she got to where she was. And I realized she did. And actually, it was a commercial law master's, which I then did at Melbourne Uni. So if I hadn't networked, I wouldn't have found that out. And so you also learn about career paths and what qualifications you might need to do.
I think I just want to add to that and just say you have to be out there in whatever you do, in whatever field you have. I find that in a lot of companies they have Friday afternoon drinks. Go to it, be a part of it, because you never know what can happen. I mean,
and have a glass of water if you don't drink.
Yeah, why not? You can have a glass of water if you don't want to drink. But I went to a networking event 2 years ago, and I met a recruiter, and he asked me, what do you do? And I told him, and I got a call 2 years later. He remembered me.
Wow.
That is the value of networking. If you make an impression. So also this is also very important part of it. It's not just about networking. It's about going there and speaking your truth, and of course making that impression. It's very important.
I have to also say sometimes mentor and mentees, it doesn't work. The dynamics don't work. And if it doesn't work, just be honest and say, sorry, I don't want to continue this. You know, it doesn't always work. So.
Yeah, you always have to. So, I mean, I do a lot of mentoring and coaching. So the thing is that you have to make sure that you both are aligned. If you don't feel the energy, I as a coach or a mentor just say, I don't think it's going to work, you know. But I'm wise enough to do it now. Previously, you just want the work because you want to make money, you know. But right now, I mean, I'm at a point where I can understand, you know, you can judge. And you as yourself, if you are encouraging, you know, to get yourself a mentor, just make sure that you're comfortable with that person. It's very important.
And I think the other advice is, I don't think anyone, so I would be surprised if you said, you know, can we have a chat? I mean, you don't go up and go, hello, do you want to be my mentor? You know, you just go, look, I really love what you do, or I like what you said on stage. You know, I'm just seeking some advice or something. Can we have a chat? I don't think anyone would say no unless they really don't have time or they're just an idiot and then you don't want them to be your mentor anyway. I have had a couple of those out of the blue, and actually it's very flattering. So don't think there's any problem in asking, because what's the worst can happen? They say no. So if there's someone you really admire, even someone who you think is out of your league, email them, get them through LinkedIn or email them, or if you're at a conference or a thing and they're on the stage, go up and speak to them. You might be very pleasantly surprised.
I totally support what you, Barbara and Nazira, said both, because I remember I reached out to Nazira when I was doing my master's thesis, and I just wrote her on LinkedIn, and I was like, what's the
Yeah.
worst thing? And I needed
Yeah.
people to interview for my master thesis. And then I went to London and I just went knocking door by door. The area in London where South Asian women are.
Yeah.
And I was like so uncomfortable at first, but then I liked the process, and I
Yeah.
met some
That's
incredible
good.
women.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, be aware mentors are not sponsors. Mentors can't get you jobs and be a reference. And mentors are not coaches. They're not there to give. I mean, some might start lecturing and think that they're coaching you, which is great, or if you don't want that, but be aware of the difference between coach, sponsor, and mentor. That's important, because sometimes there's a mismatch in the expectations of the mentor relationship. Yeah.
Thank you so much for answering those questions. I'm not sure if anyone has any more questions, but we've got like a bit more than 10 minutes. So I will briefly then summarize what we've talked about. And I want to thank everyone for today's event, for being part of today's event, especially Barbara and Nazira for taking the time out of your busy schedules. And then it's been a very inspiring discussion, I think, personally, and I really like the vibe that is so encouraging. And maybe sometimes all we need is this encouragement from women who have already been in these shoes, you know, have already started from somewhere and are in these managerial positions. And I'm sure it took a lot of time and energy to get there. So
A lot of
and
energy.
Tell me about it.
and it's clear that today we have more opportunities as young women and young people as well, that innovation, leadership, and participation is something that is very valued in renewable energy. And I also want to remind you that our conversation doesn't end here. We're going to have more events and conversations on different topics, especially on female empowerment. And for that, I want you to stay tuned. So I'm going to send to this group chat the membership application form for those of you who are not members and want to become members. And you can check our website at femight.org, where you can learn more about us and what we are doing. And yeah, I really want to thank everyone again for your time and passion and commitment. And let's continue working together to create a future where women, not only in the energy sector, but in every other sector, are supported, celebrated, and are leaders. So yeah, have a good evening, everyone.
Oh,
And
thank you,
looking
Esma.
forward
And
to
thanks to
seeing
you.
you.
Yeah, thanks to you. That was wonderful that you're taking this up, putting all of this together, Tarana. You've really done well. And I really congratulate you.
Yeah, and you have another event coming up, haven't you? That you
Yeah, that's on 5th of November.
Okay, what's the topic?
It's on work and life balance. I think Agnes already left, so it's more about how to build resilience and self-confidence.
Great, great. I'll try and listen to that. Yeah.
We'll be looking forward to it.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Nice.
Nazira. Thanks,
Bye.
Tarana.
Bye, Barbara. Nice meeting you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.